we're not alone in this, because I read in a Time magazine article on the subject that the Supreme Court upheld a right of the Amish parents not to send their children to school past eighth grade. And yet, it did not uphold this free exercise clause to protect Native Americans who wanted to engage with their preteens in the use of peyote. In other words, there are limits on this First Amendment religious freedom right in terms of what parents can do with their kids. So is this going to go the way of the Amish? Or I'm wondering if, in terms of bridges between Jewish society and secular society, any of you have a brief, because we're over time already, statement of some type of attempted solution to wrap up. Rabbi Rockover, you first.
You asked if we had one. I think that this is, I don't know if there's a bridge, but I think there is, as I tried previously to suggest, that there's a really good opportunity here to try and put yourself in other people's shoes. And if you don't believe in a system that's extra human, then it's impossible for this to make sense beyond something that's merely a medical procedure that is forced upon a child, that doesn't have necessarily any value, but is optional and could be done to jump into our shoes or whomever's shoes and say, listen, there's a belief system here, there's a God in the universe, and that compels people to do certain things, which may not be ideal according to my moral standards, but it certainly aren't heinous as certain other things in the history of child abuse and child sacrifice and things are. So what you have here is really a deep divide in the state of conversation about where morality comes from. And I think that's really the question here, is whether or not that can be bridged. I also don't think that ultimately this will stand up in the Supreme Court or whichever courts it goes to. But it's an interesting case of bans on certain forms of ritual slaughter. There are also exemptions are made for certain religious communities. So that's a possible, something that might come up the pike if it actually does pass. But I don't know. I really do think, though, that we should find the clearer voices on both sides of the conversation and try and understand them as sensible people trying to do something for the good of people, and not to cling to the more radicalized voices in these debates.
Okay, Rabbi Susskind, anything to add?
I agree with Rabbi Rockover that I don't think ultimately this is going to become law. I think that there already has been an outcry on the federal level saying, this is really going too far. But I certainly believe that the conversation should continue, because I do think that it's worthwhile for us to seek understanding with those who have a very different viewpoint. And I don't necessarily believe that simply because some of the, as they call themselves, intactivists are anti-Semitic, that's the case with all of them. And in fact, there is certainly a subgroup of intactivists who are Jewish and who at least claim some connection to the tradition. Now, I think that my personal feeling is that there's some disconnect between themselves and the tradition, which we want to bridge.
Okay, Rabbi Blair, you get to wrap up.
It's hard to disagree with anything either of my colleagues have said. A topic that isn't going to be solved anytime soon. We're going to see it brought up not only in this context, but in many others, as we see more and more religion conflicting with the public civil sort of approach to the world in the United States, and we'll be seeing those discussions.
Okay, well, I'm glad that we have commentators on those discussions such as yourselves who make sense of it for us. So thank you, rabbis, and we'll see you next time.